Welcome to the This Gal Travels podcast, the show that helps you travel more, travel easier, and travel better. I'm Trina, and today I am talking about how to plan an awesome trip. It's all about travel planning strategies and essentials. My best pro traveler tip is at the end, so make sure you listen all the way through. Depending on the kind of person you are, you may love or hate travel planning. Personally, I love it. I love poring over a travel guide and just imagining all the wonderful things I'm going to get to do. You know, all the activities that I'm going to do, the places I'm going to go see, the people I'm going to meet, the foods I'm going to taste. I mean, to me, that gets me excited. That lights a fire. Back in the days when it was only paper travel guides, I used to just love having a travel guide to read through and leaf through. And that was the best thing in the world to me. I would even do it for places I wasn't ready to go yet. And that was still fun for me. But I also know that this isn't for everyone. This isn't everyone's favorite thing. So I'm going to discuss a few different strategies for both the style of travel planning as well as the type of trip you are creating. And I'm going to discuss ways to make the logistics side of trip planning a little bit easier, because I don't know if anyone enjoys that. In fact, raise your hand in the comments. Let me know if you are someone who actually enjoys the logistics side of the trip planning, because for as much as I love planning a trip, the details are not the fun part to me. The first big decision, of course, is where do you want to go? Are you a luxury traveler? Do you like to rough it? Are you up for adventure? Do you like shopping or beaches or jungle or snow? All of these things. Do you want a hot trip or a cold trip? Are you going to have to work a little on your vacation? I'd love to say don't work at all, but if you own your own business, you might have to work a little, so internet may be important. What kind of activities do you enjoy? Or do you want to have a themed vacation, like the best neon signs in the US or Hollywood filming locations? Not necessarily in Hollywood, but you know what I mean, where they've filmed things like Game of Thrones or Raiders of the Lost Ark or Star Wars. So this is a very fun part of the process, but if you have a lot of places you want to go, the hard part is choosing. And if you're not sure where you want to go, you might have a lot of research to do to get the trip that you want. So once you've decided the type of vacation you want, say you want a beach vacation. Now there's a lot of choices to be made there. Do you want beach with a side of adventure? Do you want beach and culture? Do you want beach and culture and adventure and a little bit of everything? As I say, I used to love to look through the guidebooks at the bookstore or the library. However, now it is a whole lot easier to research places you want to go. So obviously you're going to hop online. The problem comes when you type in 10 best beach vacations and all you get are these big company travel sites that are just trying to sell you tours. One of the ways to start to get around that is to tailor your search for something like the most underrated beaches or the most interesting beaches or maybe haunted beaches. Start coming up with adjectives to describe the kind of beach you're looking for. You may know that you want to do your beach vacation in Southeast Asia or Africa. If you can narrow down your region, that'll help right off the bat. It'll help narrow that list. And if you're looking for something that is really unique, check out the website Atlas Obscura. They specialize in coming up with the odd, the weird, the slightly different kind of places to go. The reason I suggest using something that's odd or weird or off the beaten path for your search is just so you don't get inundated with those tour company candy-coated pictures and such that just don't represent reality. I say look for websites that are written by individuals and people who have actually been to the place and not just generic tour websites. Not that tours are a bad thing, but they're not necessarily going to give you the broadest picture of your options. And sometimes tours are not especially good for covering all of the different types of activities. You'll have a tour that covers a certain set of activities and it's on a theme, but they won't show you everything that's available in a country. So do some searching, and I suggest that even if you think you know where you want to go, keep an open mind and see what you find while you're looking. You might stumble onto something that you didn't expect. And that may lead you on an absolutely grand new adventure into a country that you maybe didn't know much about, but you might fall in love with. The trick is, as you're searching, as you're going through pages, make yourself a bookmark folder. And anytime you go, oh, cool, that's the time to bookmark that page and put it in your folder. If it doesn't give you an ooh or an I'm not so sure it should be on your list. So once you have your list of, let's say, up to 10 countries, it's time to narrow it down. And this is where we need to start getting practical, at least a little bit. If you only have a week of vacation, you might not want to travel somewhere that's going to take 24 hours to get to. When my husband and I started our world tour, we flew to Jakarta, but that was from Los Angeles to Tokyo, then Tokyo to Jakarta, and it was like 23 or 24 hours of travel time. If we only had a week, and then you also had to get back on the other end, that's going to give you maybe 5 days, and you're going to be kind of exhausted. I might not recommend that long of a flight. So if you only have a week, cut out anything that has like a 24-hour travel time. If you have 2 weeks or more, though, don't worry about it. That's plenty. So for some of you, the next consideration might be budget. If you are on a tight budget and planning a trip, say within the next year, well, then you need to choose something that you can afford within that time. If you have a big trip you really want to go on, like say a trip to Antarctica, I'd say start a travel fund for that one, but don't starve yourself of travel until you can afford that one. Have another travel fund for smaller trips that you take before then. If you need some strategies for saving for your travel fund, check out my episode of Travel Now, Not Later. That'll definitely give you some strategies to help you afford the trip you want to make. And since we're talking about money, I want to say thank you to everyone who has donated to my Buy Me a Coffee fund. Every dollar counts, it is all appreciated, and it all goes to help keeping this running and keeping this channel going. So thank you very much. So now you've maybe crossed a couple of things off your list. The next thing is there a destination that scares you a little? Is there one that makes you just a little bit afraid, but there's something totally awesome and cool there that you want to do? Okay, as long as it's safe, and I'm talking, you're not going into a war zone or where there's bandits or terrorists or anything like that. As long as it's safe, leave it on the list. Do not let fear remove a country from the list, because I think once you start doing some research on the place, you'll find it's probably not as dangerous as you think it is. And if it is truly that dangerous, then take it off the list. Got to be realistic here. Now take a look at your list again and see which destinations excite you. Maybe you've written all the little different activities down that interest you for that country, which would be a great way to take notes for this. But whatever you've done for your list, you know what's in each country that's left on your list, and which one excites you, and which ones are kind of like, If it's take it off now. Just get rid of it. As long as it excites you, it gets to stay on the list. If you're still having trouble deciding, consider joining some Facebook travel groups if you're on Facebook, or maybe jump on Quora or Reddit. But get into some travel groups and see what people there have to say. Get in the group, ask questions, be a good citizen within the group. Don't ask someone to plan your whole itinerary for you, okay? Just say, hey, I'm considering going here. Is anyone from there, or has anyone been there? And what can you tell me about this? Ask specific questions, okay? But get in some travel groups on Facebook, because they have them. They'll have them for like Southeast Asia. They'll have them for Europe. They'll have them for, even just as narrow as, West Africa. Because you'll not only find other travelers there who have already been to the place, but you'll often find a lot of expats in those groups too. And so you can get a real inside view of what a country is like and if it has what you're looking for. So now that you have made the decision of where to go, that is absolutely awesome if you're traveling alone. However, if you are traveling with your significant other or a group, you obviously probably want to take your top 3 to 5 choices and present it. And I'm going to put a little warning in here, because not everyone is a good travel partner. They could be your best friend, they could be the person you love more than anyone in the world, but that doesn't mean they are going to be the best travel partner for you. So if your style of travel and their style of travel are significantly different, make sure you talk beforehand and discuss all the activities in a place, discuss Things like, oh, hey, I want to go try to surf on this beach in Morocco, and there's not good internet, so you're sort of stuck with not much to do. You can either walk around the Medina or go look for goats in trees. You know, you have to choose whether that destination is going to work for you or not. If I were handling a large group, I would probably limit it to 3 choices. And I would have all the activities for each choice laid out, as well as budget for those people who might be on more of a budget. And then I would have everyone vote. And of course, obviously, if one choice is a really bad choice for someone, then you might have to take it off the list or substitute another. Maybe you have 5 possibilities, but you present your top 3, but if one of them gets knocked out because there's just a totally objectionable one for one of the people in the party, you can substitute in another one really quick. The other thing I can say for a large group is try to pick places that have a lot of activities, unless you're all of the same mind, like you're all up for doing a cycling adventure across Scotland or something. Then that's your one goal, and that's completely fine. If you're a diverse group that's going to need a lot of diverse activities, make sure you choose a place that has a lot of options. Or even if there's not a ton of options in any one place, that throughout the trip there's different styles of things, so everyone has something that they'll enjoy. And no matter how many people you are planning for, make sure you leave the lines of communication open. And also you want to discuss what they want from the trip. Okay, because they might say, oh, I really want to go to this one temple in Thailand. And there's about 1 million temples in Thailand, so you might want to find out, why is it that specific one? What are they looking for from the temple? Because it might be that specific temple, and then you want to make time, make a day for that for them. Or it might be oh, I wanted to see a Buddhist temple in a limestone cave, and I'll tell you, there's a bunch to choose from. So you might be able to satisfy their desires in another location that then has something else that you want to do as well. So definitely keep the communication open and talk about what you're going to do so that everyone knows what to expect. Oh, and also be aware of, even if you are on a theme trip, sometimes things can get tiresome. Speaking of temples in Thailand, temples in Southeast Asia are everywhere. And I know Tim got templed out when we were in Southeast Asia, and I was trying really hard to keep them all a little bit different. But with him being mostly blind, some of them he couldn't see real well, and he just got a little tired of going to temples. So try to keep a balance and variety of different activities, even if you are going with a theme. And at the point that you finally come up with your absolute final destination, buy the guidebook. I will be honest with you, I very much prefer the hard copy of the guidebook. For the trip I'm on now, I couldn't carry all the guidebooks with me, so I have a lot of them in ebook form, and I'll be honest, it's just not as good for planning a trip. Unless you are a master at marking up ebooks and highlighting and bookmarking and flipping back and forth, it really is just easier to do it in a physical copy of the book. By the way, I love books, and I normally wouldn't do this except with a travel book. But if you do buy the hard copy of a book and it is, 1.5 inches, 2 inches thick, and you do not want to be looking like a tourist just walking around with this giant guidebook in your hands. I'm going to tell you what I did when we were in China in 2007, because that's exactly how big that book was. And basically, as I say, I have everything highlighted and dog-eared already. And in order to stay a little low-key on how much we were trying to figure out things as we went, whatever city I was in, I would basically tear out the pages for that city and keep them in my pocket. And that makes you a lot less conspicuous when you do have to go look it up really quick. And it does just make it a lot easier. And the reason I don't feel bad about tearing up a guidebook is, number one, they go out of date fairly quickly. A lot of the information in them changes. And so they have a very short lifespan. The other thing is, it's like a toy well loved. A guidebook, torn up, dog-eared, and highlighted means it has done its job, it has served its purpose, and it has made your trip better. It's a good thing. It means it was well loved. So don't feel bad if your guidebook is a mess by the end of your trip. And in most cases, I am partial to Lonely Planet. I'll leave a link in the description. There are a few exceptions that have other guides that cover certain countries better, but overall, Lonely Planet does a really good job. You have your destination, and if you have travel mates, you have something of an idea of what they want to do, and you have something of a plan. The question now is, are you going to travel tight or are you going to travel loose? Assuming you're not taking a tour and that you're deciding this trip on your own, if you decide to travel tight, be careful. If you try to overplan your days, you're going to exhaust yourself. And if you try to overplan your days and something goes wrong, then it's going to throw everything off. As I mentioned, when we went to China, I actually overplanned the trip. The trick, this absolute secret, is if you overplan your trip, plan to drop things off the list. Okay? You might say, I want to do these things each day. And just know that you're probably not going to get to them all. Don't worry if you don't get to them all. Prioritize which ones are the most important and which ones are, oh yeah, we'd like to do that if we have time. Because no matter how well planned you are, something is going to come up. And everything is going to take longer than you think it is. Or someone gets an upset tummy, or the train is running late, or the trotro breaks down. Something is going to happen to throw off your schedules. So know that if you try to keep a tight schedule, you need to allow for breathing room, for life to happen. And if you like to travel loose, depending on how loose, well, if you're a totally loose traveler who just arrives and figures it out when you get there, you're probably not even listening to this portion. But if you like to travel loose, I still sort of recommend that you at least do enough research on the country to know what's available. And obviously, if you're going to travel that way, you want to ask a lot of questions when you arrive. You know, hey, what's the best place to do this? Hey, what's the best place to do that? Is there something I shouldn't miss in this city? Talk to people locally and ask them where they would take you if you were their family member or their best friend visiting. A lot of times what you'll find is between tight and loose and fast and slow, you're going to find that a mix of the two is usually best. You might have a couple of days that are just jam-packed, and then you take a few more relaxing days. And that brings us to the next topic, which is taking breaks. Are you someone who likes to hit the ground running? You land, and the first opportunity you get, you're out exploring and doing all the awesome stuff? Or are you someone that once you land, you kind of want to take a relaxing first day and ease into your new location? That's your first thing to figure out. And if you're traveling with another person or a group, you might want to leave the first day as a free day so that everyone can take their first day at their own pace, and then everyone will be ready for the meat of the trip the next day. As far as taking breaks throughout the trip, and this may depend on whether you're in the large group or by yourself or with just one other person, to be honest, I don't recommend planning your breaks, because in a way, you don't know when you'll need them. When Tim and I went to China for 6 weeks, we just kept going and going till we needed a break, and then we'd take a day off. It's really funny because on one of our break days, we decided, okay, we're just going to go to the park and relax. Well, we did not know what parks were like in China, and we did not realize how insanely active their parks are. And we went to this one, and it had a haunted house and a boat ride and a tea house and Tai Chi and karaoke, and it turned out to be one of the most fun, adventurous days we'd had, and it was supposed to be a rest day. But we tended to take breaks as we needed them, and it averaged out to about 1 day a week that we needed a break. If you're only traveling for 2 weeks, you might only need 1 day off in that entire time. But that's why I recommend just take the day off when you need it. Don't try and pre-plan when you're going to need a break. And this ties into your hotel planning, because on average, I would say do your research, know the hotels you probably want to stay in as you travel. But I wouldn't book anything past your first hotel. If you are going to the capital city or the main city to fly into, and you plan to stay there for 4 days and do everything in town, book that hotel. But don't book the next one I'm assuming you're traveling around a country and not just staying in one place, if you're traveling around a country. So don't book the next one until just before you're sure that you're going to be headed there. You might need to get a bus ticket or arrange other transport, but don't book your next hotel until you're ready, because one, you might find a better hotel. Talking to locals, they might say, oh no, this other one's much better and much cheaper. And two, it leaves you room to adjust your schedule on the fly. Even if you are keeping a tight schedule, it is better to book as you go. The one exception to that is if you are going to somewhere that has an event, whether it's a convention or a festival or any sort of major event. Obviously, you need to book ahead for that sort of thing. And depending on how big of an event it is, you might have to book really far ahead. If part of your trip is attending a big event, make sure that you put it at the beginning of your trip if you can, and leave yourself a couple of days between your arrival and that event. Just in case anything happens to delay you, you can still make your event in plenty of time. So let's look a little bit more about budgeting for your trip. Obviously, most things you can look up online. You can check your travel expenses, the cost for your hotel, your airfare, of course, and it's real easy to budget for your trip online nowadays. Even if you adjust your plans as you go, you can get an idea of the price ranges available in any given destination. Some things to remember if you're trying to save money is that you might find a cheap hotel somewhere, but it's way out of town. You got to consider, is it really worth that much savings if you're having to pay for a taxi to get into town and you're going to be going into town a lot? Sometimes the offset, you might as well have just gotten a hotel in town. And to be honest, most of the time I recommend being near the center of town, because it is really usually just more fun, especially if you're in walking distance of things, whether it be places to eat or things to do. Being in the center of town can be a whole lot of fun. Now, if you're looking for peace and quiet, that may not be what you want to do. But overall, if you're looking for a more active, fun vacation, I'd say be as close to the center of town as is reasonable for your budget. But keep in mind those taxi fees. And once you've determined your budget, you've figured out approximate food costs and souvenir costs and activity costs, and you think you know how much your trip is going to cost, add 25%. Just to be safe. One, there are always sorts of costs that you don't realize that you need to figure in, and they will come up. Two, things might cost more than you expect. And if neither of those is an issue, there's always that activity that you didn't know you wanted to do until you got there, and you don't want to be so tight on your budget, if you can help it, that you have to say, no, I can't afford to do that. Or no, because I'd have to go into debt over doing that. Hopefully it's not that big of a thing. But if you got a chance to hot air balloon somewhere and it was going to be the most amazing thing in your lifetime, that's a great thing to have a little extra cash to go do. Or if you want to go on an orangutan houseboat tour in Kalimantan on the island of Borneo, that was an absolutely brilliant expenditure that we did. And it was more than we would normally spend on something, but it was 100% worth it. You want to leave yourself open so you have some flexibility to do these things that you might discover after you get there. And there's one thing you don't want to skimp on, is don't skip the travel insurance. And I'm not going to put a big downer here and spend a lot of time talking about travel insurance, but I will put a link in the description to an article I have on travel insurance, and it covers two of the top travel insurance companies. Make it part of your budget. Don't think it's something that you're going to skip or get out of. Get a quote from, at the very least, the two companies that are in the article. Travel insurance covers everything from a delayed trip to lost luggage to a medical emergency. So definitely it needs to be part of your planning. Okay, so now we are getting to the nitty-gritty of things. And this is simple. Make yourself a list. Actually, make yourself a couple of lists. I would say one for your documents, one for stuff you need to get, and one for your packing list. And whatever you do, just make sure you write things down when you think of them, because if you say, oh, I have to remember to put that on, no, put it on your list right now, even if you just have to take a voice memo on your phone, but note it down somewhere so you don't forget. Speaking of documents, That's the fun thing we're going to talk about next. The thing you need to know about passports. First of all, if you don't have a passport, whether you're ready to travel yet or not, just get one, because it can take a long time and they are another form of identification, so they're never bad to have. If you already have a passport, check the expiration date, because most countries require you to have 6 months of validity beyond the trip that you are planning to take. If you don't have that length of validity, they may not even let you on the airplane. Now that you have your passport out, I want you to do one of two things, or maybe even both of them. First, take a picture of the main page of your passport and save it in an album on your phone, so you just mark it documents or travel documents and have it as easy access. Because oftentimes there will be a situation where they need your passport, but maybe you've already stashed it away somewhere hard to get to, and they'll accept a scan on your phone. Things like, I've even exchanged money, which usually they're probably not supposed to do that, but I've exchanged money. I have checked in at hotels. There are a lot of places where they want you to see your passport, but a scan is perfectly fine. The other thing I would consider doing is having an app that scans to PDF. And it's not so important for the passport, but it is just good to have when you travel in case you have to do anything with any sort of official forms that need signatures or anything like that. But if you have the scanning app, go ahead and scan your passport as well. And you might want to email it to yourself to an account you can always get to. So don't email it to your Gmail account if you're going to China. No Google in China. But email it to yourself as well, just in case anything were to happen to your phone. You would then have it on an email account. And if, as I say, everything went wrong, you would still have access to it as soon as you could get online. And obviously, I am talking about international travel here. The next most important thing after your passport is the visa. As soon as you decide what your destination is, you need to research what their visa rules are. And the best way to do that is to go straight to that government's website and check and see what it says. If you're lucky, it'll be a visa on arrival or an e-visa option. Those are the absolute best. Visa on arrival is the absolute best. And the e-visa is even better. The only thing is some countries are starting e-visa, and sometimes it's a little bumpy when they get started and things don't get sent out as quick as they should. So always leave yourself a few extra days. Don't trust the e-visa to just come through in like 1 or 2 days. You leave yourself a week or so, just in case it gets delayed. Some countries will require you to submit a bunch of forms, and a lot of times they'll say they want an invitation letter, but sometimes that just means you need to show them your hotel reservation. Be aware of that. They might say invitation letter, and you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get an invitation letter? And no, you just need a hotel reservation. You might need to check with the embassy and see if they really mean you need an invitation letter or not. And if you're having trouble finding the country's website and being sure that it is the official site for that country, the official government site, because some countries' websites are like that, you can always check. If you're a U.S. citizen, you can always check with the U.S. State Department, and they will always have a link to the proper website for that country. There are also third-party visa sites where they will offer the service of helping you get the visa. The thing is you can put the information in, and it'll tell you what forms you need based on your citizenship, which is really cool, and you can usually find out what you need to know without actually enlisting their services. Now, if you want to pay the money and have them do it for you, that is completely fine. But depending on the country, it may just not be that hard to do. The trick with the visa is some countries are a little complicated and difficult, and that's why you want to look it up right away so that you know whether the country you're going to is one of those countries, because this is not something you want to leave till the last minute. You have to have this in hand, or at least know what the procedure is before you start heading for the airport. The other reason not to leave it till the last minute is if you were going to multiple countries. Depending on where you are, you might have to send your passport to an embassy. But if you're going to multiple countries and you need multiple visas, you need to leave time to get them all. So don't leave the visa till the last minute. And if you are enjoying this podcast and finding it helpful, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe and share it with your friends. Another thing you need to check when you are checking out your visa information is whether or not you need any vaccinations for where you're going. And yeah, it may be a COVID vaccination, but it may be something else like a yellow fever vaccination. I will tell you on yellow fever that the WHO has determined that if you've ever had a yellow fever shot, it is good for life, so you don't need boosters anymore. But there may be some vaccinations for the destination that you're going to, and you want to check those out. Some of them need to be administered at least a couple weeks before you leave, so you want to be on top of those too. In the US, of course, you can talk to your healthcare provider and see if they offer travel vaccinations. You can also go to a travel vaccination clinic. And I will tell you this, if you're in the US, Costco has a travel vaccination service, and it's actually quite good and pretty reasonably priced. Now, they might have a whole list of vaccinations they recommend, and there's the required ones and there's recommended ones, and you'll have to decide, maybe talk to your doctor about which ones are truly required. Also, if you are going to an area that has malaria, talk to your doctor about whether or not you want to take the malaria prophylactics, the preventative medicines, because you do need to start those before you go on your trip. Also, you need to extend them after you leave, and always make sure you follow the instructions completely if you decide to take them. Now let's talk about ATM and credit cards. First off, I have an entire video on how to use a foreign ATM on the YouTube channel, so please check that out if you are concerned about using a foreign ATM. It's really not too hard, but there are a few things that are a little bit different. The thing is, ATM cards are incredibly convenient in most places in the world, but they also end up racking up a whole lot of fees when you travel. The best trick here is honestly to get an account with a bank that doesn't charge you foreign ATM fees. And you might say, oh, those don't exist. Because see, not only do you get charged with a foreign ATM fee for not using the ATM from your bank, but then the bank you're using charges you a fee. And you can easily get charged $10 to $15 per transaction when you're trying to get money from a foreign ATM. So I can tell you these banks, Aspiration, Lending Club, and I think Charles Schwab, all have cards that not only do they not charge you for using other people's ATMs, mostly because they don't have any ATMs of their own, but they also, at least Aspiration and Lending Club, they pay you back whatever fees that foreign bank charges you. And that is an awesome thing for saving money. It's obviously also a perfect bank account to use for your travel savings, so you can just put your travel budget all right in that one account. And there might be more bank accounts like that, and I'm sorry, I don't know the ones outside of the US that might do that for my non-US followers, but look for a bank that will, at the very least, not charge you foreign ATM fees if you can possibly find one. I lean a little heavier on ATM usage because the way I travel and most of the places I travel are very cash-heavy places. They are places where not everyone takes credit cards. Here in Ghana, especially here where I am in Tamale, I only know one place in town that actually takes credit cards. And the rest of Ghana, you can use credit cards at the big places, but your daily activities, you're going to need cash in your pocket, and that's why I lean more on ATM. If you're taking a fancier trip, you might find that you can pull the plastic out anywhere you go. You know, if you're going through Europe or the US, it's going to be a lot easier, and you're going to be able to use your plastic anywhere. But if you're traveling anywhere, if you're traveling certain places, cash is going to be king. And not all banks do this anymore, but it's never a bad idea to call them up before you go and let them put a travel notice on your card so you don't go to use it and it gets tapped for fraud, and then you have to go through a bunch of phone calls to get it straightened out. So definitely let them know you're traveling. Some banks don't worry about it so much, some do. The other thing I like to recommend is, if at all possible, have some cash for the destination you're going to in your pocket before your airplane lands. Even if you have to exchange it at the airport right before you depart, I say get it. I know airports don't have the best exchange rates. I'm talking about having about $100 in your pocket of whatever the local currency is, so that you have peace of mind when you land. That way you know you can cover the taxi fare, you can cover a lunch or a dinner or whatever you might need when you get there, or some snacks when you get to your hotel room. Whatever you need, you'll have some money in your pocket. Not every currency is going to be available at the airport, and I know there's services like TravelX. If you set it up before your trip, they will actually mail the money to your home in whatever currency you need it in. I'm not sure they have every currency. In fact, I'm sure they don't, because there are some countries that just flat out don't allow trading of their currency outside of their borders, like Mauritania. And I'm not sure if Sierra Leone allows it either. In fact, you'd be hard pressed, I think, to get money for Sierra Leone outside of the country because it's worth so little. But more major currencies should certainly be available. As I say, if you can, just try and land with about $100 worth of local currency in your pocket, and it'll make your trip a lot smoother. So now it's time for some of the logistics of your trip planning. And first off, of course, is you're going to buy your airline tickets. I will be honest with you, I am not an airline ticket guru. So I am going to say, if you want to work your points and figure all that out, find a guru that'll be better than I would be at giving you advice for that. I will say I do like Skyscanner because it's one of the cleanest sites for searching for tickets. And after you have your tickets, at some point you're going to need your boarding pass. And there was a time when I would have said, oh, I'm always using the boarding pass on my phone. But as I said, I've been on a lot of small carriers, and you still get the paper boarding pass, and there's just no way around it sometimes. I will say, once you have your boarding pass, if you have a digital version of it, take a screenshot and put it in your documents file along with your passport. Another thing to put in that documents file on your phone is your booking and reservation numbers. Now, usually you just approach and they ask your name and they look it up and it's no problem, but it never hurts to have that number as a backup, just in case something gets confused or mixed up. And it's good to have it on your phone already, as I say, just in case for some reason you don't have connection. So anything that's a travel document that you might need when you might not have connection, screenshot it and put it in that documents file. Another thing you want to put on your list is any prescriptions or medications. Even over-the-counter medications are a good idea to just scribble down. And if you have prescriptions, write down the brand name and the generic name, or just at least the generic name of the medications you're taking and the dosage and frequency. First of all, take plenty of a supply. And if you're in the US, I know that you can ask for a vacation supply from your insurance company. So get plenty. Tell them you're going for a little longer than you are, just to be on the safe side. And then what you want to do is you want to pack it in your carry-on. You want to pack it in the bag that you're always going to keep near you. And just to put your mind at ease, know that it's not as hard to replace medications in foreign countries as you might think. At least not most of them. Depends on the country you're going to. I'd say 98% of the countries I've been to have been pretty accommodating for being able to fill prescriptions. And you would be amazed at what you can just walk in and get and not have to have your doctor's note or not have to go see a doctor there. A lot of places you could walk in and get all sorts of things that are prescription only in the US. As I say, sometimes you might have to get it under a different name, but it's the exact same drug. Do be aware that if you're going to some developing countries, you might have trouble getting certain things, especially if it's something that's hard to obtain. Obviously, you know if your medication is hard to get, and then you need to be extra careful to make sure you bring it. But most common medications are available most places. If you're traveling to a very developing country, you might find it hard to get even more common medications. So definitely be a little extra careful of making sure you bring everything you need with you. This part is just for US citizens, but if you are planning to do a lot of international travel, I highly suggest that you go through the global entry procedure, and it's basically paying the government to do a pre-background check on you so that you can go through the express lines at the airport. And the same with TSA Precheck, that's if you're traveling domestically. The thing is, if you have global entry, it works for both international and domestic travel. And if you're going to do a lot of travel, or even if you just hope to do a lot of travel, it's a good thing to have. I think it lasts 5 years, and depending on the airport, you may not even have to take out your laptop or take off your shoes. There is incredible inconsistency with the rules, though, so you're going to have to follow the rules at each place individually. So there are 3 types of apps that are going to make your life a whole lot easier when you travel, and they're really simple. I already mentioned one, and that was the scanning app, like ScanBee or NoteBlock. or something like that that can scan to PDF. It's just a little more official than just a straight photo, and it's a good app to have. The other really obvious simple one is a note-taking app. It already comes on your phone, or you can get a fancier one if you want, but just a notes app. I'll tell you, when I get to a new city, I usually make a notes page for that city, and then anything I learn in that city, I put in the notes page. And then when I think about, oh yeah, that guy in Kumasi told me about this place in such and such that I should go to. And then I can say, oh yeah, Kumasi, okay, and I go look at my Kumasi notes, and I say, oh yeah, this guy told me this. And it's just a good way to do it. And the last one I recommend is TripIt, or some other type of travel organizing app, but it keeps track of your flight numbers, your hotel reservations, your car rental reservations if you do that, and you can input your passport number, and it keeps almost all of your vital information. As of last check, I'm not sure if it has a separate notes thing where you could put like your medications list or anything like that, and that's why I say still use your notes app. And your notes app is great for things that are in country, as I mentioned as well. But the TripIt app will keep all this stuff in one place for you. Even if you do this, I still recommend having a backup in your documents file, but TripIt is a good way to organize all of your travel data. So that was all the nitty-gritty stuff. But the one thing you don't want to forget about when you're planning your trip is you need to have someone looking after your home. Are you going to have someone actually house sit, or someone pick up the mail? Are you going to put just a vacation stop on your mail at the post office? Do you have pets that need taking care of? And if you live somewhere cold and it's the winter, do you need to do something special with your pipes and all that to make sure that they don't freeze up? I mentioned that because I'm from Los Angeles and I have no idea what to do when pipes freeze up, but I know that they can, and I know it's a big, messy, expensive disaster if they do. So if you have anything that you need to take care of, make a list of all the things you need to take care of for your house before you go, and make sure you have people lined up to take care of it. And my pro traveler tip for today actually has to do with when you come back from your trip. Definitely, as you are planning your schedule, make sure that you do not come back and have to go back to work the very next day. What you want to do is you want to leave yourself preferably 2 days between your return and your going back to work. You need time to reset your clock, and you need time to breathe. Now, if you had a relaxing vacation, that might be a little less vital, but you still want to ease back into it. And if you had an adventuresome vacation, you might just need a little bit of rest. Personally, I like the adventuresome vacation. I don't mind coming back tired if I had a great adventure. So your pro traveler tip is to always leave a couple of days after you return, before you have to return to your normal life, so that you can relax and breathe and bask in the wonderfulness of your vacation. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you have found this podcast very useful. If you have, please remember to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.